It's Adrian Lawrence, and my lights are all back on. So that is great. And I'm also excited to welcome in an activist and progressive attorney who happens to be running for the Democratic nomination in Ohio's US Senate race. I'm talking about Morgan Harper. Thank you so much for joining us, Morgan.
Thanks for having me.
All right, Morgan. Now, I'm sure it is quite the challenge coming ahead running for that US Senate spot, but what attracted you to run for this particular position?
Well, I mean, we really need to win, and not just win elections here, because that is an important piece of this, but also to have the win mean something, and to be able to implement policies that's going to make sure that everybody gets access to opportunity. That's been the whole story of my life, and that's what's slipped away for a lot of people across the state of Ohio. And moving in a more progressive direction with progressive policies like universal health care, like creating jobs in the clean energy sector, is a way to really chart that new path forward for us as a state. But in order to get that done, we have to start running people who actually connect with the electorate in our state and have a message that folks will think is worth showing up to vote for.
Yes, and I know that we need a lot of people to show up and vote, but there's also been a lot of concern in terms of voting rights and really being able to get people to the polls, especially when they're from marginalized groups. Is there anything that you are particularly doing to try to overcome that?
It's a huge issue here in Ohio. I mean, one of the reasons why, so our primary is supposed to be May 3rd. There's still a lot of uncertainty around that because we have this bipartisan commission that's supposed to be drawing fair lines for the congressional state house seats, and they just didn't follow the law. And this partisan gerrymandering is what they want to continue to pursue. And so, I'm very much in support of legislative efforts to ban that and would support that in the Senate. But in the meantime, yeah, we need to have grassroots mobilization to be able to ensure that folks can exercise their right to vote. And so, actually, before I launched this campaign, I started an organization called Columbus Stand Up. We got a rideshare program going to get people during the pandemic to both the polls to vote, to vaccine appointments. And so just working together at the community level, showing people what's possible. But ideally, we have legislative solutions that aren't going to make all of this grassroots advocacy as necessary, that we just allow people to exercise their rights.
Yes, definitely having people exercising their rights and playing a role in our democratic process is supposed to be what the system is all about, but we know that it has a number of failings. And I know you have had your own journey when it comes to running for office. I understand that you had unsuccessfully challenged the Columbia area representative Joyce Beatty for her US seat in 2020. What did you learn from that?
Well, that was really a magical experience in a lot of ways, because the same sentiment that I was hearing from people in Central Ohio that motivated me to get into politics of this disillusionment that has only intensified over the pandemic, I would say. We saw that with a message of, hey, look, I'm not another politician. I'm not trying to make a career out of this. I'm not taking money from corporations, is a winning message to break through and make people believe. And so we saw a huge amount of support during that campaign. And now, as I've been traveling statewide in the Senate race, it's only more of a sentiment. I mean, if you look at Ohio, Columbus is one of the few areas in the entire Midwest that's been growing over the last 10 years, but definitely in Ohio. But when you get into other parts of the state, folks are feeling very acutely what has not been working from an economic policy perspective for us as a country, that we've had so much consolidation of opportunity and power and very large multinational corporations that have hurt small businesses and us as workers, as working people. And so, being able, and this is what's so critical in this Senate race, is for us to have a nominee that is not just business as usual, traditional Democratic politician, but actually is being honest about what hasn't worked, is carving out a vision for what we could do that's different. That is the only way that we're gonna overcome the disillusionment, apathy that has really taken hold of our state and encourage so many people now to just not vote at all. It's no longer whether or not somebody's gonna vote for a Democrat or no, maybe they're gonna go vote for a Republican. It's that they just are gonna opt out altogether. And that is really, really dangerous for all of us.
I understand that your main primary opponent is Northeast Ohio Rep. Tim Ryan, and he's been endorsed by a list of those top Democrats there. But would you say he's more of an institutionalized Democrat as opposed to a progressive voice such as yourself?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, completely institutionalized. The other important thing to know about the fact that, because some people look like, oh, he's been in Congress for 20 years, but the gerrymandering works both ways. And so when you have a safely gerrymandered Democratic seat, you're not really having to garner a lot of support, campaign, work hard. So that doesn't mean as much. And in fact, this last cycle, my main Democratic primary opponent, Tim Ryan, had a very close election in what was supposed to be a safe seat and lost his home county to a Trumper. And so when we look at in this race, what is going to put us in the most competitive position to have a Democrat win this seat, it is in fact moving in a more progressive direction. It is having somebody that has more true populist message to counter what's happening on the right, because they're throwing out this faux economic populism. They don't mean it. Folks like Josh Mandel, who I've debated twice in this race, they have no ideas, no substance, but what's their attack? It's career politicians like Tim Ryan. It's people that have been in Washington that haven't gotten anything done, that a lot of people in Ohio blame for their problems. And the only way that we are gonna have a chance of defeating that is by running somebody who actually means what they say, who really does have a vision for creating more economic opportunity for people all over the state and is willing to risk their career to get it done.
Yes, and it sounds like that person is you based on what you're describing. But also I'd love to know more about your platform and what you're looking to have changed.
Well, I'm a big believer in things like raising the minimum wage, Medicare for all, universal health care. And what's really interesting too in this race right now is, because as we know in mainstream media, they often will make it seem like, oh, these are so out there, these policies, people don't support that. But we have data that shows the majority of people who are likely to participate in this Democratic primary are on board with things like Medicare for all, right? Because people, including even folks who lean conservative in some ways, know that what's going on with big pharma, big insurance isn't working and is leaving us less healthy. And so we need to stand up to that and make sure we have universal coverage, also being able to control costs. So that's a big thing for me. And then investing in clean energy jobs of the future, and want to create up to 600,000 over the next 10 years in our state. We can address the climate crisis and also bring more opportunity to places like in different regions in Ohio that have been devastated by failed economic policy over the past 40 years out of Washington.
And is there anything specifically that you think is holding Ohio back right now?
Failed leadership. Leadership that's become more about itself, that's taking money from the corporations. My opponent in the Democratic primary is one such person who also has flip-flopped on things like Medicare for all and no longer supports it. And in that is what has to change. And also what people so desperately want to hear from the next US Senator is, why can I trust you? Why are you different? And I am able to point to people and say, different because I'm not trying to make it a career out of this. I'm self-imposing term limits, 2 terms. I'm not taking corporate money, and I'm grassroots. No powerful person tapped me on the shoulder and said, Morgan, it's your turn. And quite the opposite. Actually, I've just gone to regular people who have also said, I'm sick of it, just like you, and we want something different. And we have the opportunity to get that in this election and be able to have really unbought, unafraid leadership go to Washington and just be very aggressive about delivering resources to our communities across the state.
Yes, that definitely sounds like it's something that would be a change for the people in Ohio. But I also know that a lot of people will follow name recognition as well as who they may feel more comfortable with because they're hearing those buzzwords, and the thought of change can be scary even if it goes to their benefit. So how are you overcoming those limitations?
That's a really important point. And what's interesting right now and why I think there is such a big opportunity is, what's scary is what we're living through. And a lot of people are fearful of where we're headed based on the levels of violence that have been hitting a lot of different areas: gun violence, homicides, suicides, especially young people committing suicide, the fentanyl epidemic that has become a rural, urban, suburban issue. There is a lot of fear, a lot of anxiety out there, in addition to the economic opportunity and mental health. There's a mental health crisis, that a lot of people are recognizing at all different stages of life. It's not adding up. It's not working for us. How many of us are actually in a position to be pursuing an American dream at this point? And when is enough enough? And my message is, right now, enough is enough. We have the ability to change this. And the scary thing is continuing to run the same types of people who will lose and lay the groundwork for more and more of these Ohio GOP people who do not care about us to only intensify their power both here and in Washington. And the only rational move is to actually reject that and move together towards the future and really demand what we all need to be okay.
Yes, without a doubt. I'm definitely here for change, and it's something I would love to see. I do very much get afraid that the system will go out of its way to keep individuals such as yourselves from getting to a place where you can truly be one of those decision makers as US Senator. But I know that if it's something you're passionate about, and if you can persuade the people, then you can definitely make it happen. So I'd love to pose this hypothetical in terms of day one. If you're elected into office, what would be the first thing you'd do?
Whew, that's a big one. I mean, I got to be responsive to what I'm hearing from people, and the level of violence that's happening is just atrocious right now in young lives being lost. And so being able to pull together stakeholders, all levels, folks from public, private sector, grassroots activists to just have a game plan within 90 days about what is it going to take, policy perspective, to address this so that we make sure that we're keeping young people safe. Top priority of mine. And and I'll just add on top of that, and I want it to be crystal clear to everyone who's watching, is this is our moment. Those of us who really believe in progressive policies, who believe in progressive leadership, we have the opportunity in Ohio to completely change the trajectory. And you referenced, in many ways, the biggest barrier is just resources, getting my name out there, making sure people know that I'm running, because we have the data that shows once they know, they're into it. And so we just need everybody to support as much as they can and help us spread the word as quickly as we can before May 3rd.
Yes, and so where can they go to contribute to your campaign or find out more about you?
morganharper.org is the website, and MH4OH, MH4OH is my handle on all social platforms. And again, would just very much appreciate everyone's support in this final stretch.
All right, thank you so much for joining us. That's activist and progressive attorney Morgan Harper, who's running for the Democratic nomination in Ohio's US Senate race. Thank you so much for joining us, Morgan.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat, emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.